So now we are just going to go right over to the NFC North offseason review. And not intentionally, but just where we're starting. Starting off with my Packers. Obviously, there's a huge Aaron Rodgers drama over the season. Luckily, I don't have to count that as one of the departures. But that's where I'm starting. I want to start with the departures this time. We're going to mix it up. My Packers went 13-3 last year, lost in the conference championship to the Buccaneers, as we all probably know. In terms of losses, not that many big ones. Rick Wagner, tackle, guard, Lane Taylor. Biggest one, though, here is Corey Linsley, center, one of the better centers in the league. He left. Jamal Williams, who's been a solid number 2 back for the Packers. Damon Snacks Harrison and Christian Kirksey are the main losses there. In terms of additions, brought in linebacker Devondre Campbell, tackle Dennis Kelly, wide receiver Randall Cobb. As we made that meme and everyone kind of knows that was in the Rodgers Accords, as we like to joke. First round pick Eric Stokes, who I'm kind of warming up to from things I've heard in camp. Guard/center Josh Myers we got in the second round, and we also got a wide receiver finally in the third round, Amari Rodgers out of Clemson at pick number 85. So I'm actually I'll throw it to you, John, first, since I'm the Packer fan. What were your thoughts on what my Packers did this offseason? Do you think it'll be enough for one last ride, one last dance with Rodgers and Devontae, or do you think it's they're not going to get their happy ending?
Well, Art, I just want to say that I'm wearing a Vikings jersey, but I need everyone to know, and I said this last time I wore it, I am not a Vikings fan. Adrian Peterson he was born in my hometown, and so I love Adrian Peterson. He's my favorite player ever. So it is an AP jersey. This is the number 28, not 58. I know it's reversed on the camera. But number 28. So just so everyone knows, I do not care about the Vikings at all. I probably can't name a single player on the Vikings team that I like right now, except for maybe Harrison Smith, but there's nobody that I'm like, wow, I really like that player. So just to get that out of the way, Packers fans don't hate me because I don't care about the Vikings. Okay, Packers offseason. I feel like the whole offseason was just the dark cloud of the Aaron Rodgers stuff was just hovering. And I think it made a lot of their moves go under the radar just because it all became about, will Aaron Rodgers stay? Will he be traded? All that kind of stuff. So first off, I was a little shocked that they allowed Corey Linsley to leave. I figured he'd be a key piece that they would try to keep. But also from what I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I've heard you talk about this. This is just kind of what the Packers do. They reload on the offensive line. It's a position group where they actually center, and they picked up another Ohio State center, which Corey Linsley, also an Ohio State product. I know my Cowboys did that with Wisconsin, but it just seems like they were confident enough in their ability to devote that money elsewhere because Corey Linsley, and just to reload on the offensive line. So I don't mind that move too much. I know some people might point to that as a huge loss because of the great season Corey Linsley did have, but I think that replacing him with a second round center, Josh Myers, I'm fine with it, honestly. The other move that I really, at first I didn't really like it, was losing Jamal Williams. I really liked him in y'all's scheme. I thought that he was just a great 1-2 punch with Aaron Jones. But I think it made it more clear as to why, because obviously they had A.J. Dillon, right? And he's on a rookie contract, so they're not going to get rid of him, especially after the promise he showed at the end of last year. But I think most people expected, okay, you keep Jamal Williams, he backs up A.J. Dillon, and then you let Aaron Jones walk. Well, they shockingly re-signed Aaron Jones, and I did not see that coming at all because, once again, as much as I love Zeke, I've just kind of come to the decision that that running back is a position that I just don't value as much as some NFL teams do. So we talked about it in the draft. I wouldn't draft him in the first round, and I probably wouldn't pay him the big money unless it's like Derrick Henry or McCaffrey, somebody who's like literally your franchise corner piece, and without them, you would have to go to full rebuild. So yeah, I was a little, I don't know. I'm not a fan of the Packers, but I was kind of bummed out that Jamal Williams left. He was like a really likable player. I liked him in y'all's scheme. So that was the other move that I just wasn't a big fan of from the Packers but I get it because they kept Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon showed promise. So you kind of got to free up the snap count for AJ Dillon to come into his own. The additions, Randall Cobb, I think is I just thought it was kind of a funny situation because I felt like that was just Aaron Rodgers like flexing his muscles, like, yeah, I'm in charge here. I'm in control. You know, the GM Brian Gutekunst, I don't know a ton about him, but I think that was just one of those things to where he just had to give in because it's Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers said, I'm not going to play on your timetable. I'm going to play on mine. So if you want to get rid of me after this year, well, I just want to leave right now. And once they said, no, we don't want you to do that, they gave in Aaron Rodgers' demands, and that was to get Randall Cobb. I don't think Randall Cobb is going to be a massive difference maker, but I know that him and Aaron Rodgers have a lot of chemistry, and that's a very underrated aspect in sports is just having that chemistry, being on the same page with each other. And we saw that the other Packers receivers, they're just not, besides Devontae Adams, they're just not as reliable as one would hope. And so having a veteran who that Aaron Rodgers can trust, I think that that's important. So I don't mind the move, but I don't think it like elevated them to a whole nother stratosphere, right? So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on the Packers. I mean, obviously they're going to win the NFC North. Like none of these other teams are really primed to compete with them, I think, just as an overall unit. And I mean, I think for the last 2 years they've had the talent to go to the Super Bowl. It's just can they put all the pieces together and have the right moments in their runs.
All right, so yeah, in regards, let me talk about their offseason before I get to Rodgers. Not counting Aaron Rodgers. Just looking at the offseason, I like Devondre Campbell as a to bring in because our linebackers aren't that great anyways, and we're going to be running the Seattle scheme. So and he's run it before in Atlanta, so we'll see what he can bring, and hopefully he can play up to the level that he did in Atlanta. I love the signing of Dennis Kelly, a guy who can play either tackle spot, especially since I'm not sure the status of Bakhtiari, because remember he did tear his ACL late last season, so he may be gone the first few weeks of this season. Heck, I'm not even sure what the O-line's who's gonna be where, because Elton Jenkins, very good guard we had last season, but also played center and played tackle. He can play basically all 5 spots in the line. So I think that helps. But getting, like John mentioned, getting Josh Meyer, especially since we've lost Corey Linsley too. Maybe he plays center or at least guard. We'll see. But and like we mentioned with some teams, like just some teams just know draft really well certain position groups. Like Jaguars usually. I know everyone likes to get crap on the Jaguars, but solid at drafting wide receivers. Same thing with kind of the Giants for the most part. It seems like your Cowboys always find solid defensive tackles, and then Packers it's like O-line, and I have confidence in that. I'm interested to see what role Amari Rodgers will have, especially now, like John mentioned, we got Randall Cobb, which I am with you. I think that's just more of reliability, especially when Rodgers does the scramble drills, because as a Packer fan, that's like been an issue every year. It's like, they've been working on their scramble drills to get open, and so I'm assuming Randall's there for that. And also we just needed a better slot receiver. Most of our guys are, more outside receivers. I mean, I know Devontae can play inside, but, I think we'd rather have Devontae, move around. But Randall can also play outside. So, yeah, I like that. But in terms of, like, overall as a team, I'm not confident we got better because, like I mentioned last year, and I'm going to mention this year, I don't think our run defense got any better, and that was a huge issue. Gosh, for the past few years. We'll see if the new scheme changes that. I hope so. I mean, like I mentioned, Eric Stokes, I wasn't high in him when we drafted him because I was like, we could go wide receiver, lineman, defensive lineman, linebacker. We didn't do any of that. But from what I hear in camp, he's doing really well, and he actually might start week 1, which is huge, for any rookie, really. So I'm excited about him. And Rodgers, yeah, I expect this to be his last season. As a Packer fan, I don't put what happened during the offseason really on him, and I think, and yeah, like I've mentioned to John and other people, I'm just appreciative at this point that we have Aaron Rodgers, and if he goes elsewhere, I'm not going to hold a grudge or anything because we kind of deserve this as a Packers organization. So, yeah, that's I'm gonna put a ball on that for the Packers offseason. I think just last point, I think we both expect them to be in the playoffs, win the NFC North now that Aaron is back. I mean, I'm assuming you're on that boat, John, Super Bowl contender-ish for my Packers, kind of. So
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think they've had the talent to go to the Super Bowl and win it the last 2 years. It's just putting it all together and making it happen.
all right, alrighty, so that is the Green Bay Packers. And now we're gonna move on to I think I would say our biggest rival, which would be the Chicago Bears. Chicago, we 8-8 last year, lost in the wild card. And here are their losses. They've had some big ones. Kyle Fuller, I think, was a huge loss, underrated, under talked about. He left. Also, cornerback Buster Screen, defensive lineman Roy Robertson Harris, who was a good, solid defensive lineman. Lost both their tackles, Charles Leno and Bobby Massey. And then also, not that big of a loss to some Bears fans or people in general, but Mitch Trubisky also gone from Chicago as well. In terms of additions, brought in cornerback Desmond Trufant. Tackle Jason Peters, which I think shows how desperate they are at the offensive tackle position, because I think Jason was ready to retire again. Grabbed quarterback Andy Dalton from your Cowboys, said he was going to be QB1, but then at number 11 in the draft this year, first round, traded up, grabbed Justin Fields, and then in the second round, grabbed Tevin Jenkins, who actually I believe is going to be out for most of the season, had a back issue come up, which is a whole different thing that we're not even going to get into. But hopefully for him, he gets better, gets back next year. But yeah, I'm going to throw it to you again, John. How do you feel about the Bears offseason? And I think we're both going to have the same answer. But do you think they should go Justin Fields or Andy Dalton week 1 against the Rams?
All right. So first off, I mean, Andy Dalton, I think they signed him because they didn't think they were going to be able to get a quarterback like Justin Fields in the draft. I think if they knew they could, they would not have signed Andy Dalton. Are you making that face because I'm lagging or because of what I said?
No, because I was muted when I was reintroducing you back, but it's only like 5 seconds, so it's okay. I'll cut it out.
Okay. You're good. Sorry,
that was on my bad.
Just wanted to make sure I wasn't lagging. Anyway, so I feel bad for Andy, and I commented this on some post with our podcast account, and I actually got a lot of heat for it. All these dudes are saying, "Oh, blah blah blah," but I think Andy Dalton is a starter in this league. I think you put him against Jared Goff. I mean, if you take age out of the equation, I'm taking Andy Dalton.
I agree.
You put him against, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other starting quarterbacks who suck. Jalen Hurts, like realistically, if you take age out of the equation right now, I'd probably take Andy Dalton. Now, Jalen Hurts probably has the potential to improve, but I've also seen Jalen Hurts all in college, and I got to be honest, I'm not sure that I don't think he's going to turn to a franchise quarterback.
I agree. Sorry, one more name too. Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like, I'm sure Washington, as much as they like Ryan Fitzpatrick, they would probably prefer Andy Dalton if they could, I would think.
Yeah, I would put Andy Dalton there. And some people might disagree with me, but I'm taking him over Daniel Jones. Last year, Daniel Jones was not good. Like, I know that Giants fans are going to say, well, he got better. No, he didn't. His first year, he threw like 20-something touchdowns, and last year he threw 10. He got worse. Yeah, I think that Andy Dalton is a starter in this league. I think he can start for 3 of the 4 NFC East teams. I think he can start for the Lions. There might be a few other in there that I'm just not thinking of who the quarterback is. Even think like if Big Ben retired, right? I think he's better than the options like Dwayne Haskins that the Steelers have. So anyway, I think he's a starter in this league, and I think it sucks for him because I also think that Justin Fields is just going to fit better. Their offensive line is not amazing. It sucks that Tevin Jenkins got hurt, and to me, it feels like when Deshaun Watson took over. I'm not as confident in Fields as I was with Watson, and I don't think that Andy Dalton is even anywhere close to how bad Tom Savage was. But that being said, a quarterback who can move but isn't really athletic like Andy Dalton, the offensive line is just not going to do him any favors. And if you throw a mobile guy back there who has a lot of potential and upside, and he's done it all through high school, through college, and should be an NFL quarterback, I just think that he and his ability to move in the pocket would be more beneficial to this Bears team. Because I don't know if you watched, but this was a highlight that went viral everywhere. But it was the Rams Bears last year And Jalen Ramsey got absolutely toasted by Darnell Mooney on this one stutter step route. It was going to be an 80-yard touchdown, but Nick Foles got destroyed the moment that the ball hit his hands, and he threw it, but it was just so off target because he was getting hit. Like he couldn't even see where he was throwing. And so that's my worry. But if a quarterback was able to just move, run a little bit, and then chuck it, plays like that can happen for the Bears. And so I realistically think that they're going to try and get Justin Fields within the first 5 weeks. And once again, I feel bad for Andy Dalton, but I think they start off with the Rams, and you don't want to put your rookie in there against Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. That's just going to kill his confidence if he does poorly. But after
in
that,
LA too, like away game, so it's not like you have to pressure the home fans clamoring. So, sorry.
Yeah, but after that, sorry, I'm gonna look up their schedule real quick because they have a few easy games.
They play the Bengals like week 2 or 3. Maybe that's what Andy's holding out for. He just wants his revenge game,
Yeah.
and then all right, sub me out. I'm good.
Yeah, so they go Rams week 1, then Bengals week 2,
Okay.
which that's an easier game, but I think you got to give Andy that game. Browns week 3, I think their defense has a good shot at being really good this year, so I think you still keep Andy there. But let's say at that point you're 1-2, you've lost to Cleveland, you've lost to the Rams, and you beat the Bengals. But even then, like the Bengals last year, they had some games where they were in shootouts, right? With the Browns, those games were close, so that's not a guaranteed one. So I think there's potential that they go 1-2, 0-3 at that mark. And then after that, you got the Lions and the Raiders, who are not very good defensively, neither of them. So I think at that point, that could be where you see a Justin Fields come in. But that being said, if they're like 3-0 or 2-1, I think they're going to keep riding with Andy Dalton until maybe they reach a point where it just seems like, they figured out what their ceiling is going to be with Andy Dalton, and it's probably not playoffs. Then I think that'd be where they put in Justin Fields. So other than that, for their offseason, I mean, it was decent, I don't think they did anything crazy. I liked their draft. I thought losing Kyle Fuller was pretty shocking because I figured he'd just kind of be one of those guys that stays there for a long time. But someone put it to me, someone just explained, like, listen, Khalil Mack makes a lot of money. And when you got a guy making that much money on defense, you're going to have to start making some cuts to improve other spots of the roster, like your offensive line, like your quarterback, to get an Andy Dalton for $10 million. And they're paying Nick Foles a lot of money. Don't forget about that. They traded for him, and he's got a big contract, and he's riding the bench as right now their third stringer. So, yeah, I think it sucks they had to lose Kyle Fuller, but it makes sense financially why they had to do it because who's making the big bucks over there. And at least for their sake, I hope that they're able to trade Nick Foles. Nick Foles' sake too, because I mean it sucks to see a guy who, once again, there's a few teams I think he could start on in this league. To see a guy like that not even have a shot, and I think he could have been good for the Bears last year, but once again, their offensive line was just so bad, and he's not mobile.
Yeah. So all right, in regards to the Bears, in terms of their whole roster, I am concerned about all the losses at corner. I know they drafted a corner last year. I'm forgetting his name, first round.
Jalen Johnson.
But still, I mean, I'm still worried corner depth-wise, especially in a division with Aaron Rodgers. And I know everyone likes to crap on him, Kirk Cousins, but both teams have, Devontae Adams, Adam Thielen, and Justin Jefferson on the other side. Those are the two teams you have to worry about right now. And, as good as their defense has been, I think we saw a little bit of, like you mentioned, like they've kind of hit their limit because it's hard for them to add more talent. And I think, too, an important thing to factor in about the money aspect is got to re-sign Roquan Smith soon, too. So I think, and they have the decision to make pretty soon with David Montgomery, who's had, a good solid year last year. So I think same thing with Tariq Cohen, who's coming out.
Allen Robinson is on the franchise tag.
Yeah, and Allen Robinson, I mean, gosh, I don't even know what's going to happen there. I think that's an underrated story, too. Like, I guess he's going to play, but remember, he very publicly wanted out. So, just a name to keep an eye on, like around the trade deadline, especially if, I think we both wouldn't be shocked if, they're like, 4-4, 3-5 out of the playoff picture. Wouldn't be shocked if that happens along with the Nick Foles trade. But in terms of the quarterbacks,
Which, real quick, just before you go, I think that's another reason why Justin Fields might start earlier is because I think he'd be more likely to stay if Fields balls out.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to too. Like, just and I think maybe that's why Allen Robinson's upset too. It's just Matt Nagy's offense just hasn't been very impressive, very creative. I know it's just a lot of glimmer but no meat. It's just a lot of pre-snap stuff. Oh, cool, but you only did it for like a 5-yard play. It's nothing deep. We did see towards the end of last year, kind of not really simplified, but changed the identity. Started going more under center, bootlegs, kind of running what Green Bay and the Vikings kind of are doing. Run first with the quarterback under center, running bootlegs, and I mean, as John already alluded to, I think Justin Fields can run all that. And I know I was kind of low on Justin coming into the draft, but what I've seen preseason wise, mainly his throwing, because that was my concern. I think he's improved his throwing, which I do like. And I think if I were the coach, I would just throw him out week 1. I mean, he's going to face tough defenses throughout his whole career. No one's expecting you to win the Super Bowl. So, let him get his. I mean, obviously, hopefully he doesn't get hit like he did the other night by Aaron Donald. But let him get his licks in. Let him make his mistakes. Let him learn. Just get as much learning as he can. And like you mentioned too, maybe he can help salvage the relationship with Allen Robinson, who, gosh, hasn't had a freaking QB his whole career. I like John. I would go Justin Fields for those reasons. No offense to Andy. And once again, I'm not surprised. I'm a little surprised. Maybe it's the price tag, like John mentioned, $10 million for probably 1 year. Surprised they aren't trying to shop him to a Dallas or some of these other teams that might need a quarterback. But who knows? Like we said, maybe if they do go Justin, that's their plan too. Is hey, we'll trade Andy at the deadline, especially if we can't trade Nick Foles, who no one wants that contract probably. So they may be stuck with him, unfortunately, and he may be stuck with them. But that and the offensive line, corner and offensive line is a big worry for me. So I don't expect him to go very far. But maybe with Justin, they can be a little more competitive and such. So, alrighty, that's gonna wrap it up for the Chicago Bears. The Bears. Now, not going on that one yet. Now we're gonna go on to the Minnesota Vikings, the team that John's not a fan of, but wearing their jersey. So here's what they did this offseason. Lost safety Anthony Harris, cornerback Mike Hughes, center Brett Jones, longtime tight end Kyle Rudolph, and left tackle Riley Reif. But addition-wise, pretty sneaky good offseason. Brought in Patrick Peterson, Sheldon Richardson, I believe, came back. I think he was there before he went to Cleveland, if I remember correctly. Got a guy also who I really wanted, Dalvin Tomlinson from the Giants. Also brought in Everson Griffin back recently, cornerback Rashad Breeland. And then in the first round, this really killed me because I already mentioned how Dalvin Cook, I've been in that offense, I've been dicing at my Packers. Hey, now they got a really good tackle. John mentioned they didn't have a lot of offensive line talent. Now they got a tackle, Christian Darrisaw at 23. And then also I threw into quarterback Kellen Mond in the third round. Maybe someone, that they can develop once Kirk goes, and I forget when his contract expires. I think he has like 2 or 3 years left. Regardless, someone they can maybe move on from, from Kirk. But, alrighty, John, you're wearing their jersey. How, try to enter the mind of the Vikings fan. How do you feel about their offseason? And do you think they can actually? I think that they're like one of those teams that make it to the playoffs like every other year. So they didn't make it last year. Do you think they can make it this year?
I do. And here's why. I think they're going to be a wild card team. The expanded spot, I think, bodes well for them. Also, if we just look at the NFC as a whole, I feel like the AFC, for example, there's a few divisions where you could see like 2 or 3 teams being playoff teams. For the NFC, NFC East only is going to get 1. I mean, the NFC South, maybe 2, NFC West, that's where you could see 3, right? So, I mean, I don't know if 4 would be possible. I mean, technically there's 3 wildcard spots now, but that'd be kind of crazy.
Unlikely.
So yeah, so I could see the Vikings making the playoffs as like that 7-6 seed kind of a team. And a large part of that is, like you said, I think they got better on the offensive line. I loved Christian Darrisaw. So did you. We both had him as our second ranked tackle in the draft. I think he's just a mauler up front. He's really athletic, really strong. And so I think he's a massive upgrade for them. Riley Reif, he was okay, but like nothing crazy, average at best. So I think that they upgraded along the offensive line. And really, out of all the losses, the only one that I thought was not going to happen was Anthony Harris. I figured they want to keep him and Harrison Smith together, but it doesn't shock me because it just feels like there's always been some other safety kind of across from Harrison Smith, and Mike Zimmer can just make it work no matter who it really is. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's just next man up attitude for Mike Zimmer in that other safety spot, especially when they decided to address the interior of their D line as opposed to addressing their secondary. And so, like you said, they brought in Dalvin Tomlinson, they brought in Sheldon Richardson. I like those additions. You get two guys who can just stop the run. And once again, you said this about your Packers, but they're not amazing at it. The Vikings, they weren't amazing at it last year. It didn't help that they had a lot of injuries on the defensive line. But I think Dalvin Tomlinson, he's a big body who can help with that. Sheldon Richardson, another guy who can help with that. You get Danielle Hunter back from injury after last year. You bring back Everson Griffin, who's already familiar with the system. So your D-line is pretty set. You have depth there. And now you don't have to worry about, Aaron Jones torching you, which makes life on Aaron Rodgers so easy because now the run game is killing you. Of course, he's just going to eat you up in the air too. So now you can at least hope to try and contain the Packers, who are really, what you're having to compete with for the NFC North spot. And so, yeah, I like their overall offseason. I didn't like the Kellen Mond pick. That I'm just not a believer in him.
Third
I
round.
think that when
Gotta take a shot.
I mean, yeah, it's a third round pick, and maybe he works out, but I don't think he will. I 100% think that he's not going to work out. When I've seen a guy play like that his entire college career, and I really didn't see any meaningful signs of improvement through those 3 years of college, I just can't think that he would all of a sudden make a big jump in the NFL. Typically, the kind of guys that do that are the guys who, they were redshirted, for their first year. They had to sit on the bench for their second year. They only played one or two, and then they go to the league like a Mac Jones, right? And so you believe that he's got a high ceiling. Kellen Mond, it feels like I know what he is. And I guess NFL scouts think differently, but yeah, I didn't like that pick. But overall, I thought they had a good offseason.
Yeah, so I'm immediately going to that defensive line thing because that's what I thought when I saw those additions, and also we're all forgetting too Michael Pierce they added last year. I think he opted out due to COVID, so they want to get big and stop the Packers. Just Dalvin and Michael, you're in the middle. Sheldon can kind of kick outside, play weak side defensive end or other side, and Danielle play defensive end, and then they can do a lot off that. We're sure those four can hold the run. Now our, Eric Kendricks, one of the better linebackers in the league, Anthony Barr, and they did get Pat Pete, even though he's been down since his PED suspension. Just saying. Cameron Dantzler had a solid season, and obviously you have Harrison Smith, so he can probably do a lot with those guys on the back end. So yeah, that does scare me as a Packer fan. On top of their like I mentioned, or like you mentioned too. Getting an offensive tackle that have a solid run scheme already. Now they have a tackle that they can maybe do more things with too. Justin Jefferson with another off season because remember I think he even said when he was on the I Am Athlete podcast, the fact that there wasn't even a preseason it messed him up. That's why he was slow out of the gates because I remember drafting him because I was high on him and then there were reports he was a third receiver behind. I forget if it was Chad Beebe or OC. He was a third receiver, and obviously, as we saw as the year went on, he was not the third receiver. He could have arguably been the number one. I think Thielen dealt with some injuries and such, but regardless, fully healthy those two, and another offseason with Kirk. I expect this team to, if not make the playoffs as well, be in the playoff hunt. So, definitely a team I'm not looking forward to facing twice a year as a Packer fan, especially Dalvin Cook in that offensive system. So. We'll see how that pans out. Now that is the Vikings. Now we're going to run over to the last team in the NFC North. Last, maybe least, but anyway, the Detroit Lions. It seems like the cycle continues. Flushed out their coaching staff. Bye-bye Matt Patricia. In comes Dan the Man Campbell. They're going to bite your kneecaps, so we'll see how this works out. But I think in bigger news, as we all know, now I'll start with the losses. Trade away Matthew Stafford, let Marvin Jones and Kenny Galladay walk. When we mentioned Everson Griffin went back to Minnesota, he was in Detroit for a brief period last year. I guess to end the year. Lost defensive tackle Danny Shelton, linebacker Jared Davis, Desmond Trufant, cornerback, and Justin Coleman, cornerback. Now they did make a few interesting additions. Got Jared Goff in that Stafford trade along with a couple first round picks. Brought in Jamal Williams, who we talked about earlier, solid back, especially since they have DeAndre Swift, so he can be either teach Swift some things or at least be the 1-2 punch for DeAndre. Brought in wide receiver Brashad Perryman. We'll see how that works. That's probably not going to be notable. Cornerback Nicole Roby Coleman, and then also defensive tackle Michael Brockers, which I thought it was funny because, like I mentioned before, he's the one that was trashing Jared Goff, and then he got traded there. Draft wise, like we mentioned, Penei Sewell earlier, the only tackle we felt better than Christian Darrisaw. They got him at 7, and then they just went D-line second round. Levi Unwuzurike, a guy I liked at 40. They got him at 41, and they also got another solid guy, defensive tackle Aleem McNeil in the 3rd round. So kind of similar to the Vikings-ish. They're kind of addressing the D-line, playing the division, which I think we see a lot of teams do. Trying to beef up the defensive line, stop the run, get big up front. But how do you feel about the Detroit Lions this season? I mean, I think we all expect them not to make the playoffs. Sorry. Shout out to our friend Squam, who's a Detroit fan. But I expect we don't even make the playoffs, and for this year just to be a rebuilding year. But do you expect that from the Lions, or are you straying from the path?
No, I think they're a candidate to be one of the worst teams in the league.
Okay.
I don't think they'll be the worst because I think they still do have talent. One guy that I'm excited to see what he does this year would be Jeff Okudah, obviously the really highly drafted corner. Last year, I think they took him 3rd in the previous draft. And so last year, I mean, they still had Justin Coleman and Desmond Trufant, so we didn't get to see him do a ton. Also, he was kind of slow out the gate, but once again, no preseason. Just the COVID stuff, it just made it difficult. So I'm interested to see how he does. But overall, I like the beginning of what they're doing for their rebuild. I mean, you get a couple first-round picks for Matthew Stafford. You can't complain about that, right? Jared Goff, I think he's a solid placeholder quarterback. Maybe, he gives you a solid guy for the moment, but also he's young enough to where maybe there's still a chance that he could develop into something that, you keep long term. I don't think they will. I think at most he's probably there for 2 years and then he's probably gone. But yeah, I mean, getting him back, I don't really have a problem with it in the trade. And then I really liked what they did in the draft. I'm a big believer that if you're going to reset your team, build through the trenches, and that's what they did. They got Penei Sewell. They got Levi. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. Onwuzurike. And then obviously McNeil, the other defensive tackle. It just makes me think of the way that like the Cleveland Browns have sort of rebuilt their team. You wait for that moment to where, and like maybe you're not going to be very good because you do build through the trenches, but you wait for that moment to where you can really get that quarterback who is then ready to come in and help you win right away, as opposed to getting a quarterback, you struggled his whole time there. And then because of the talent that was around him, maybe you're not fully sold on him, or maybe he wants out like Deshaun Watson did because of the way that they got rid of their talent. And there's a lot of question marks. So you'd rather that on that quarterback's rookie contract, you are ready to compete for a Super Bowl, because that is the prime moment for any team to actually really do it, because the rookie contracts for quarterbacks are so freaking low that you can put all that money elsewhere. And so, yeah, I know some people thought that with that 7th pick, they should have taken a Fields or a Mac Jones, but I just think with the state of the roster, getting your quarterback now, I don't think that it really, you're still it's going to take you a few years, it's going to take you a few years to really come back to being a relevant team. And so, yeah, I like getting a franchise left tackle, getting a guy who can become a franchise defensive tackle, and just, getting those cornerstones for your offensive and defensive line. And that's how you start your rebuild. I'm a fan of it. So yeah, overall, I mean, it's weird to say that I was a fan of their offseason because they got way worse.
Yeah.
And I wasn't necessarily a big fan of like the hiring of Dan Campbell. I think his interviews are really entertaining. But he's just kind of one of those coaches that's been thrown around in the hiring cycle for a while as being a potential head coach. And I don't know, maybe I just don't know enough about him, but Yeah, I thought they had a solid start to their rebuild, and I like the moves they've made so far.
Yeah, I think that's what they did was basically what we kind of wanted out of like teams like Atlanta. Like, just hit the
Yes.
reset button, man. Don't do this with half measure. We'll trade away this piece, but maybe we'll. They hit the full reset button. And yeah, like John kind of alluded to, and like I alluded to, just don't expect this team to be very competitive. They also have a tough schedule. Let me pull it back up here. I mean, week 1, 49ers, week 2, Packers, week 3, Ravens, and then the Bears at Chicago, and the Lions. Obviously, yeah, they're the Lions, and then the Vikings the week after, and then their first break is like the Bengals. That's week 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and then and by the way, you play the Rams the week after. So, like, could very easily be like 1-6, 1-7 coming out the gates. I mean, no receivers either. Like we just mentioned, they lost most of their receivers. I know they drafted one in the 4th round, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who, you know, they're excited about, but if we're being honest, they have no one else. So, I mean, I'm not saying he can't be bad. I'm just saying we'll see. Like, I want to see in the regular season. But yeah, like John mentioned, I like that. I mean, I don't like the fact that they're the way they rebuild as a Packer fan, because I feel like I'm very worried that they may just upset us one game. Who knows? Knowing the Packers, but regardless, yeah, just building it very smart. Let's just get the guys in the trenches, get our premier tackle, and then ride Jared Goff's bad contract out. Hey, we got for 2 first-round picks for it. That's fine. We'll ride the contract out. I think they have an out after next year, so they can cut him loose, open up a lot more cap space. If they find the quarterback they love, maybe next draft or the draft after, no money tied to a lot of guys, so they can bring in some free agents or trade for some veterans that have maybe bigger contracts and push their chips in the table, especially if guys like Aaron Rodgers leave after next season, because then division's wide open. So yeah, I'm not going to do much longer on the Lions because sorry, Lions fans, we don't expect much from them. But I do expect this team to be at least a tough team. I expect them to be in a few close games. Maybe at least the way that Dan Campbell is, trying to change that culture to, tough guy, bite your kneecap culture. So, so that's the Detroit Lions. That's the NFC North. So now